Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series.
Because creators are businesses.
What we do is not simple.
Give, the fans everything that they deserve.
Being creative
is like doing a 5,000 piece puzzle.
Is something that you can learn and do over and over again.
Always be as authentic as I can be.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series. I am thrilled today to have one of the co-founders of The Gist, Miss Ellen Hyslop. I am so excited for her to be joining me today. Ellen, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
I am excited because one of the things that I'm super passionate about is your field of work, bringing awareness, women in sports, in all different directions and all different areas of sports. I want to talk about and hop right into your passion for sports, first of all, and where your love started for sports.
I have always been a super massive, avid sports fan as well as an athlete. I literally can't remember a day in my life where I didn't love sports. I was really lucky to have a dad who encouraged so much of my sports fandom. I think I was probably at my peak sports fandom in between the ages of 7 to 9. Actually, I was watching probably every single MLB, NFL, WNBA game that I could watch at that point. And I grew up playing soccer as well as figure skating and competitively, and then every other sport under the sun, more so from a more relaxed perspective. But sports have always been and continue to be probably the biggest source of joy in my life, I would say, ever since I was a young kid.
I love that. And hopping right into The Gist, I mean, a newsletter that has started and grown to 700,000 plus subscribers on it.
1 million, over a million.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, over a million
It's absolutely
subscribers.
incredible. I want to talk about what was the pivotal moment for you, JC Roslyn, and realize that, like, hey, this isn't a side project. This is something much bigger. This is a full-time job now.
Yes. So we started it as a side hustle, really off the side of our desks of our corporate jobs in 2017. Came up with the idea really organically, having some takeout and white wine together. Started working on the idea. We soft launched it in Toronto, which is where we're all from, at the end of 2017. And in 2018, we had the opportunity to apply for an incubator program. So it was called the Facebook Journalism Project. And Facebook was selecting 5 teams across Canada to take part in this program, where each team received 100,000 in non-dilutive funding, 60K in Facebook ad credits, and office space and access to mentors, which in the startup world is unheard of, getting undilutive funding, or non-dilutive funding rather. And so we all agreed, okay, if we get into this program, if we're one of the 5 companies selected, then we will quit our cushy corporate jobs and decide to commit to The Gist full time, because this really feels like a great opportunity to kickstart us, which not a lot of other startups have. And so we got in. And I think the biggest thing that program did for us is I think first things first, it validated our idea. When you have people who've been in the startup space who are providing you with funding, when there's a big company like Facebook, it kind of gives you that blue check mark of, okay, we are actually onto something. And then with the funding and the mentorship, it gave us the opportunity to try new things and to grow. And then that beget another accelerator program with Techstars and more funding and things like that from there. So I would say that was the impetus to us going for it.
I love that. And you've talked about publicly, like, some early growth tactics that you guys have done. Like, what's something scrappy that worked in year one that is something you're like, it wouldn't fly now that you've got this big audience base?
I would say that there were 2 key things that we did in year one. The first thing is we hosted a massive party to launch The Gist, and somehow we made it this thing that everybody wanted to go to. And instead of charging money to come to the event, we said, your entry is your email. And the only way that you could come to the event is if you give us an email and then you're automatically subscribed. And we basically asked everybody there, once you receive the email, forward it on to your next three or four friends in the city who you think would like it. And so we started from the beginning with 200 subscribers. And then after our first newsletter, we had, I think, 800 subscribers. Basically, every single person forwarded or signed their friends up without them knowing, that type of thing. So that was really, really cool to see that. And obviously, we worked with a lot of different local friends and businesses to give away a bunch of things, free alcohol, free food, all of that sort of stuff hosted at Shopify. So that was one. A party does a lot, and there's that stickiness with the brand. And then the second thing is, and this was before we had a referral program, we worked with different local brands who had an audience that we wanted to reach, but also they wanted to support us and wanted to reach our audience as well. And we worked with Soul Cycle, whereby if Gisters sent us their emails of three of their friends, and if their friends remained subscribed, then them as well as their friends got 2 free weeks to Soul Cycle. And so that was a really big opportunity for us because we're getting all of these subscribers for free. We're not paying Soul Cycle, but it was also an amazing opportunity for Soul Cycle because they know that once they get women in the door, then they're more likely to come back, spend on a new class and what have you. And so I think just from that Soul Cycle initiative alone, we were able to get 500 new subscribers, which Soul Cycle was shocked that they had to let that many people into their classes for 2 weeks, but it ended up being a really great growth initiative. And so I would just recommend figuring out who are the partners that have a similar audience and that can value you and figure out ways in which you can grow and be an asset to each other.
Partnerships are so incredibly important. And I mean, you just gave so many examples as to why they are so important, especially when you're starting early on. I want to get into the partnerships between you, JC, and Roslyn, and how your friendship plays in this co-founder dynamic and what you guys have learned about working so closely together and how that dynamic works. Because I know you're head of content, JC's got her own department, and Roslyn's got her own as well.
Yeah, so I guess to start, Danielle, Roslyn isn't operating day to day in the business anymore. She is a strategic advisor for the Gist. She left the business, I want to say over a year ago now, a year and a half ago now, to start her own company as a business coach. And so, really happy for her. She's been helping us as a strategic advisor here and there, but has gone off and kind of done her own thing on that side. And so now it's really JC and I who are working together to run the business, with me mostly focusing on anything external facing, anything Gister forward, growth, audience, that type of thing. And JC really thinking about how we're earning revenue and driving new partnerships. And then we have an amazing team from there. I think the co-founder relationship is one that changes constantly and one that you have to continue to work on. The way in which we work together when we started the Just when we were 25 compared to today when we're 33 is really, really different. We know so much more now. We've failed a lot together. I think we understand each other's strengths as well as areas of opportunity. We, I think, are just a lot more ruthless with the way that we're spending our time and understanding what we in particular need to be doing to push the business forward. But we really do operate as a duo that can fully rely on each other, pass things back and forth to each other, really strategize on what we want to be doing day to day, week to week, year to year, 3 year, 5 year.
Yeah.
And so it's really fun. And for anyone kind of thinking about whether they want to be a solo founder or have a co-founder, what have you, I myself literally could not imagine doing this without co-founders. And then at the same time, I've heard solo founders being like, I'm so glad that it's just me. But it can be really lonely, and it really is a different experience that nobody else can fully comprehend unless they're in it with you. And even business to business is different. And so it's really nice to be able to have someone that you can chat to about those things that does actually understand it like nobody else in your life.
Absolutely. I want to get into, still in the early stages of the gist. How did you guys navigate that early credibility challenge as women building a sports media brand, especially in, as you guys have shown a light on, such a male dominated space?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think in the early days, we struggled with it a lot more than now, of course. I think what was really difficult is that we were young. We had no media experience. We had no sports experience, but we did have a lot of business experience. We all studied business. We all worked in different areas of corporate finance and financial services. And so we had this really strong background in the business world. And I think where we really set things up and where we started to see growth with the gist was actually leveraging our lack of media experience and leveraging our lack of sports experience as an asset to understand who the audience is. And I think still putting fan first and gister first is what differentiates the gist so much in comparison to a lot of other spaces and places, because we do understand what an everyday fan does in comparison to someone who's a little bit too in the mix in sports and then thinks that that's the entire life, where
Yeah.
really day to day people have jobs, they have families, they have hobbies, they have things that they want to do. But recognizing that sports and the conversation that you can have and the social currency that it brings is still really important. And so we are always thinking about how we can cater to that gister. When it came to raising money and capital and whatnot, us having no experience was definitely really hard. We had some really difficult conversations when we were young. It was really hard breaking into speaking with brands. It was really hard breaking in and speaking with different media companies. I always bring up in these conversations that men in the workplace are promoted based off of their potential, and women in the workplace are promoted based off of what they've shown and what they've demonstrated. And we kind of experience the same thing as business owners and as co-founders, whereby once we were able to show the growth and once we were able to show the engagement and once we were able to demonstrate to brands and investors alike that we had this thing going on, then we had no problem raising money. We had no problem working with brands, all that sort of stuff. But in the early days, it was kind of like prove it, prove it, prove it, as opposed to, I think if my name was Alan, it potentially would have been like, you know what, there's a lot of potential in this. Maybe I'll write you a check. And so I think that there was some things there with experience, but also probably bias a little bit in the early days too.
Putting together the newsletter, and then of course you guys have the podcast as well, the gist of it, which, can I just say, gister and the gist of it, it's the greatest play
Oh, good.
ever. I absolutely love it. With the marketing background, I'm like, this is the greatest.
Good.
But how do you and the team decide which cultural, social issues, or what kind of content goes into your newsletters being talked about on the podcast, being shared out on social?
Really great question. And it's so fun and it's evolved so much and it continues to evolve as our audience changes, as the world changes, as different consumption habits change, I think as well. We really want to be the go-to source for sports for underserved sports fans. And each channel provides a different opportunity to dig into a different topic in different ways. Social is daily, really quick hit. Newsletter is 4 times a week, 5-minute read. Podcast is twice a week, about a 30-minute listen. And based off of those cadences and based off of the purpose of each of those channels, we'll dig into different pieces of content for different reasons. We have an amazing content team in-house. I want to say we have 10 to 12 people on our content team now, full time, maybe 10 full time. And they're so good at staying up to date on everything that's happening in the world of sports, but also everything that's happening more broadly from a cultural perspective too, and then narrowing in on what are the most important stories that we need to provide our gister. We're all about providing that curation, that context, that entertainment in a really digestible way. And so when you think of an hour-long sports center, we cut out all the shit that's really not needed there and bring it down into 5 minutes and be like, this is what you need to know. This is why you need to know it. And this is why it's fun to know it. And that's kind of the newsletter and the point there. And that's really a one-to-one relationship. Social, a little bit more fun, a little bit more entertaining, more breaking news, developing a community there. And then the podcast side, it tends to be a little bit more of an avid fan who's wanting to go a bit deeper on really topics that span the world of sports. And so it provides us an opportunity to dig deep on topics that we don't necessarily have the space to do. And a 5 minute more news forward newsletter provides us to be able to do something a little bit more evergreen on the podcast side of things. And so to me, it's all about like adjusting for the channel and adjusting for your audience across each of those and really understanding who you're speaking to.
Yeah, and you called it out, which was leading to my next question is you've turned sports media into a relation-based space where you
Mhm.
are having these events. You do have all these different avenues. Do you think fans trust the gist differently than Sports Center, than ESPN's, all these different shows? Do you think that trust is different?
Funny that you say that. So we do run surveys and track behaviors and all of that sort of stuff for Gisters so that we can make sure we're providing them with the best content and products that we can. And we're their go-to source for sports. And that's above ESPN, that's above CBS Sports, that's above Fox News, whatever it is. So we are their go-to. And I think we've developed that trust because we approach telling the news differently. We tell the news in a way that's including men's sports as well as women's sports. All of our content is created by women, and we really do want them to feel like it is this relationship and that we're fans together. I think a big thing that traditional sports media does is they speak to an avid fan. They're people in suits talking at people versus we are more so wanting to grow the pie in the sports industry. If sports wants to grow, it has to bring in different type of fans. And right now it's only speaking to one type of fan, and it's mostly avid male fans. And so what we do is we change the tone, we change the voice, we have a conversation with as opposed to talking at. And I think that that makes people feel more comfortable. And then too, when we make mistakes, we're like, oh my God, we made a mistake. Like this should have been this. We recognize this. We tell both sides of the story as much as possible too. And so that's been really cool that we're seeing all of these Gen Z and millennial women choose the gist over any other major traditional network.
Yeah. Is there a headline that, from your perspective, we're not seeing enough of when it comes to, some of the mainstream outlets, some of the things that you wish would be showing up?
I have to think about that. I think it's starting to get better on the social media side of things, I would say, from those traditional outlets. I think that they're recognizing that there's this whole other audience on social that they can speak to, but then it doesn't necessarily translate to what they're putting on their website or what they're putting on air. But again, for them, those are different audiences. That's an older audience that's watching Sports Center. It's an older audience that's going on their website versus on social. I think for me, and what at least we've noticed with our audience that I feel like potentially other platforms could learn from is that the next generation of sports fan doesn't consume sports the same way that the boomers or Gen X actually consume sports. Those generations are proven to be a little bit more fandom based off of your household,
Yeah.
fandom based off of stats, fandom based off of that's just how you grew up and you're leaning in and that's what's happening. Versus Gen Z and millennials are proven to be more sports fans based off of culture and knowing the athlete first. And that's why I think you're seeing so much success in the WNBA right now is because those individual athletes, especially last year's draft class, have done an amazing job of being personalities and brands themselves. So you feel like you know them and then you're going to watch the game for them. I feel like Angel Reese and Unapologetically Angel and how well that podcast is done, how amazing her social presence is. So many people know and love Angel actually for her off court first. And then they say, oh, okay, she plays for the Sky. Maybe I'll tune into Chicago Sky game from there. And so I think, again, if we want to grow fandom and if we want to grow with these next generations, we have to adjust our storytelling too based off of what they're telling us they like. And so that's a big thing for us too, is how can we storytell off the field so that it provides context
Yes.
to what they're doing on the court or on the diamond.
I think WNBA and PWHL have had just absolutely like mega years this year.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, it has been incredible that even now PWHL has gone and added these two other teams that you're
Hmm.
like, we're growing, and it's going to be incredible to see where this leads in the next few years.
So excited. They've both been doing such amazing things, and I think especially on the PWHL side, them not being owned by, the NHL, for example, and them being owned by someone like Billie Jean King and Walter Enterprises, I think that they're having fun with it, and again, really leaning into their community and like understanding their community and what the community wants and needs and how they can grow with them at the same time too.
Yeah, they went on their big tour this year and they
Hmm.
made one of their stops here. And it was great to see. I'm a massive Carolina Hurricanes fan. And so
Oh, I'm sorry for your recent loss.
thank you. I have been heckled quite a bit at work with some Panthers fans. So it's one of
Okay.
I looked at them, I was like, I need a few days. I can't talk to you guys kind of situation. But
Yes.
heartbreaking to see. But it was great because you brought in the PWHL here in a southern market where the Hurricanes been growing so much. We've gotten
Hmm.
comments by media that, we're not a typical place for hockey to be played, but you filled an entire arena for women's hockey. And it
So
was
cool.
so cool to see. And especially the stories that came out of it of younger girls who were like, I can play hockey too. Like I didn't know that I could play hockey.
Yeah. So it's awesome. The Takeover Tour is such genius way to test and learn. And I think you're seeing other leagues like take a page out of the PWHL's book now, which is so cool too, right? With the WNBA doing that. And so I'm really excited to see where that league goes.
It's cool. Has there been a moment so far with the gist or the gist of it that has made you guys think like this is what we're meant to be doing?
Mm. I think so. I think there's so many small moments. I think for us, again, we provide equal coverage on men's and women's sports. We're really thinking of that everyday underserved sports fan. And honestly, every day, Danielle, we get emails and DMs to us just saying, like, thank you so much for creating the gist. I never felt like sports were for me. And now I actually like sports. And I didn't think that I liked sports beforehand, but now I'm realizing it was because of the way they were packaged and because of the way they were communicated to
Yeah.
me, not because I didn't like sports. Or it's something like, hey, I was a big NWSL fan, and because of the gist, now I'm obsessed with the NFL. And this has been such a fun and new community for me to get into and a fun new sport for me to love. And so I think honestly, it's those DMs and those emails day in and day out of our community actually thanking us and being so excited to be a part of the community that make it worth it. Because that's also really unheard of in media. I feel like normally you'd see that with potentially talent and big name talent at these places where people will be reaching out to whatever the big name is at that network, as opposed to the gist that's more so a company that has a voice that people feel connected to. That's always really humbling, and we're so grateful for our community.
Yeah. I do want to hit on the gist of it. You and Steph have such a natural rhythm together when you're recording. It's so much fun to listen to. What's your behind the scenes flow look like before an episode, before you record an episode?
It's changed a lot over the years. So at the beginning, Danielle, it was literally just me and Steph, and I was doing all the show notes.
Yeah.
Steph would review it beforehand because Steph has a full-time job outside of the gist. She would review it. Then we would record together, and then I would go and edit everything. And then as our team grew and the opportunity grew, we were able to bring in people. So we have an amazing production team who we chat about what the story is going to be for that day. They go ahead and produce some show notes against it, get the show all ready. Steph and I review it in advance, look at everything, add our own stuff, and then we have an amazing editing team now who can take it away and do some of the audio editing, but also the short form video editing for socials.
Yeah.
And so now it's crazy. We've been doing it for over 5 years. And so it feels really natural. And I think too, Steph and I have been friends since grade 4. So we know each other so intimately, and we have that relationship where we could be like, wait, say that again, or it's not, you don't get nervous if you're like, I actually don't agree with you. Like, that is not a take that I would say. Or if there's something we need to speed up on or slow down on or restate, we have that flow together. And so I think so much of the podcast, when you look at the top podcasts, they all have amazing relationships. I think about Giggly Squad or Las Culturistas. Like, those are our best friends that have a podcast. And that's kind of what the gist of it is for us as best friends who have a podcast who talk about sports.
I think you're one of the few people that can relate here. And I'm a one woman show. I edit all of this. I do all this stuff by myself.
Good
It's a
for you.
lot. It's a lot harder than people think that it is
Totally.
to produce a show of this kind.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and it's hard too because I think in comparison to our newsletters and our socials, our podcast is our smallest channel, but it's also has incredibly high engagement and has some of the stickiest subscribers too, and feels like an amazing and kind of growing opportunity. But podcasting on the back end, it doesn't have the same metrics, it doesn't have the same growth opportunity. It's a really different funnel, I guess you could say, in comparison to a lot of the other channels. And so it's all a balance of how do we dedicate our time to it and when and why.
Yeah. You guys are building something that's more than a media company. You're building something of a fandom with the gist and all your different avenues. What makes someone a gister?
I appreciate you saying that. I think that we are trying to move away from media brand and just be like, we are a brand. And so when we think about a gister, it's anyone who follows us, who subscribe to us on any of our channels. We would say as a gister, it's anyone who's purchased a piece of apparel from us, who's bought a ticket to any of our events or future events. And a lot of the times, Gisters are people who value equal coverage on men's and women's sports, value a different perspective on the world of sports and a different voice and female voice in sports. And really, what we've found from our audience altogether, they're on the go, smart
Yeah.
women. And majority women, I want to say 80 to 85% now. It depends on the channel. And when you're able to meet other gisters and you see the likeness and also the like differences too, but that core of like, we are busy on the go women, but who also care about being informed and being part of the conversation and who also are really passionate about how the gist is shaking things up and not just doing things the way that they've always been done to be able to feel welcome. That's generally how we would at least define a gister as anyone who's a part of our community in any way.
I love that. We were just talking about some great change in the role of women in sports and in a variety of different ways, from the offices to actually playing to media, all these different things. In the next 5 years, things are going to be completely different. How do you guys look forward to the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and how the gist fits into this ever-changing world?
I think ever changing nails it, right? When we started the gist, it was like Facebook and Instagram, and now TikTok has completely taken over. Podcasting was literally barely a thing. There were so many people that were like, you're going to start a sports media company without media rights, without video rights to any league. And we're like, yeah. And you know what I mean? It's changed so much. And so the biggest thing that JC and I always talk about is that we have to be on our toes. We have to be listening to our audience. And when a new opportunity comes up, we need to assess it and we need to move fast if we're betting on it or if we're not betting on it and where we're putting our resources. And so from a channel perspective and a consumer consumption perspective, that's really what we're thinking of. In terms of the next 5 to 10 years at a high level, we want the Just to be a household name. When we introduce ourselves and we say that we work at the Gist, I want to know that every single person who I meet, they're like, oh, the gist, that's awesome. Even if they're not a gister, they're like, oh, my friend subscribes to that, or my buddy loves your social.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I really want the gist to be a household name. I think what you see with the gist right now is really scratching the surface. It was always our it was always our plan that we needed to prove that there were female fans out there who wanted sports coverage in a different way from a different voice, again, on both men's and women's sports. And the way that we wanted to prove that was through media, and getting to that 1 million subscriber milestone, I think really proved like, hey, this is what women want. And also, B, you can make money off of this and you can be a profitable business from this too. And so, that's the first stage. Is we've proved our point. We have a really great business based off of what we're doing right now on the media side. But now it's time to cultivate this community and think about what we can do next and how we can serve them better. And so we've actually been doing a lot of research. We've been talking to a lot of gesters, one-on-one focus groups, what have you, to figure out what's next for us and what makes sense for them. And so in the back half of this year, beginning of next year, you'll see some new things from us in terms of membership programs, event programming, different types of content that you'll see that I'm really excited for, because that feels like the next kind of evolution of the gist. We're always trying to meet our gisters' current needs while also anticipating their future needs. And then at the same time, applying that business lens and being like, okay, but how do we monetize this? Because we have to survive in this world too. And so that's kind of the next phase in the short term. Is we've built this thing. How do we cultivate our community and provide them something better than what they have now?
Yeah. And you were saying in the beginning, you guys Toronto based, but you've been able
Mhm.
to crack both the US and Canadian markets. Could the gist translate to other international audiences too? Have you guys thought about that and how to expand over or do more in Europe?
Yes, it's so interesting. We get so many DMs from people in the UK, England in particular, as well as Australia. Those are the two places where people are like, we need the gist over there
Awesome.
so bad, so interesting. I think the thing is, we have so much room to grow in
Yeah.
North America. There's so many more people who we want to be gisters first, especially in the US, before we head over to someplace like England or to Australia, especially because sports and culture is so different in those locations. And for us too, Danielle, our business is still majority American. Majority of our revenue, majority of our audience is based in the US, and we separate out our content. So we have a Canadian Instagram page, a Canadian newsletter, an American Instagram page, American newsletter. And while I'd say 65% of the content is the same, there's still like 35% that's really different. And depending on the season and depending on the sport, it could be even completely
Totally.
different. And so we recognize that there's country differences, there's local differences, to your point, being in Riley. Like we also have localized lists for 9 different cities in the US. And so we really want to make sure that we are leaning into the American market and Canadian market as much as possible. And then one day we'll head over probably to the UK,
There we go.
which could be really fun.
Yeah. I've even, in the role that I sit in right now, we have teams because we're a 24/7 business that be able to protect everybody. But we have a team in UK, we have a team in Australia and New Zealand. What's crazy is the differences and the how you display time. There's different language, like how you say certain
Totally.
words.
Jokes.
Yeah,
Totally.
that it's one where it's like, oh, this is like you have to go like learn this or have
Yes.
somebody in these regions that can help you take care of some of this stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. So we'll get there one day.
Yeah. What does success look like now and how has that changed since year one, day one?
Hmm. I think success for us now, it we have a variety of KPIs, right? If we want to get into the nitty-gritty on the business side of things, I think we're looking at revenue, we're looking at growth, we're looking at engagement rates, but then we're also going down, and we're looking at newsletter inventory, LTV to CAC, we're looking at open rate ratios, we're looking at engagement rates, and we're looking at how many impressions to follow ratios, all of that sort of stuff. And so each different part of our business, whether it's revenue, growth, finance, content, has different success rates, I would say. I think the overarching, I would say, yeah, the Gist is a success. We've been a business now in the US for over 5 years, which is so wild. They're coming up on 5 years. And we've been able to work with some really incredible brands. We've been able to grow our audience with some amazing community members. We've worked with awesome athletes. And I feel like for us, we've helped to develop this space for female fans, for women's sports, for digital media and next generation fandom too, where I do feel like we're helping to move the needle and changing things in the space. I think one thing that's really hard about being an entrepreneur though is that you can never just say, okay, like this was a success. It's always like, yeah, but we need to do more. We need to
Yeah.
get to that next thing. And so it's always difficult for us to make sure we're celebrating our successes while also being like, okay, that was great. On to the next thing. And
Yeah.
so we're in that, I think, on to the next thing phase to a certain extent too.
Love that. Ellen, my last question for you is just what keeps fueling your fire? What keeps you inspired in everything that you're doing today?
As I kind of mentioned at the beginning and call back to the beginning, I love sports. I love sports. I love women. I love business. And so somehow I created this like dream job for me, and getting to do it with one of my best friends is just actually incredible. And so my team really fuels me. Our leadership team, JC, really fuels me. And really, at the end of the day, it's our gisters. Like when I see how many people are actually opening and reading our emails, when I'm seeing people engage on social, when I'm seeing brands that are massive brands reaching out to us to be like, we want to and we need to work with you, that's providing me with a lot of fuel. And then I think externally too, those are all internal things and those are all amazing people that get it and that are within our community. But what also fuels me is when people don't know the gist, or when people don't understand the difference between women's sports versus female fandom, or when people don't understand that the next generation does not care to potentially watch an entire game the same way that a different generation does. And so it's almost that chip on the shoulder continually of also proving them wrong and teaching them along the way. And you hate to be that person that's like, I told you so. But there is that element of like, we were super underestimated in the beginning, and we continue to be super underestimated, and we're always having to punch above our weight. And so that aspect of it, I think, really fires us up to be able to change the space and to prove people wrong about women and women in sports too.
Yeah. I love when people doubt me. There's nothing that fuels you
Mhm.
more than when people doubt you. I call it my hold my beer and watch this moment. It is really one
Yeah.
of those that I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong in all aspects here, but I love those moments because it does something to you that's just like, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to do it. And I'm going to, like you said, not take all the joy in saying I told you so,
No.
but there will be a little bit of it.
There will be a little bit of it. And I think too, our community is in that journey with us too, because they've been screaming from the rooftops for a long time as well, like, hey, cater to me, do something for me. When we posted our video that we had reached over 1 million subscribers, we did this cool little sizzle reel, what have you. And looking in those comments, it was so cool because it was a little bit of a like, we were told no constantly, 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 and now look at us. And our community was also so galvanized and fired up by that because they were like, hell yeah, we've been here. Women's sports has been here. Female fans have been here. But like, you guys had to take that leap in order for us to actually be heard and to cater something to us. And so it's also for that community that you like to be that person who's pushing the space and proving people wrong, because you know that there's a huge group of people behind you too.
Absolutely love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ellen Hyslop, I just can't thank you enough for being here with me today and walking me through this incredible platform that you guys have created. And I'm so excited to see where you take this and how this continues to grow and the noise you make in women's sports.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Danielle. I really appreciate it.
Yes. You guys, I'm going to have all of the Just socials down below, all of Ellen's socials down below. Please go get them a follow, subscribe to the newsletter. And as always, I will see you guys back here next time. Bye, y'all.